Greetings everyone, Wire is here. Today we have a break from our not so regularly scheduled content for something a little different. The main focus of this channel is usually on my attempts at making a game engine and scripting language. However, I do actually have a job outside of that project where I work on very similar things that would probably interest anyone watching this channel. Today we're interviewing the CEO and CTO of SpatialApe, Daniel Sisson and Justin Barnett. Quick disclaimer, I do work for them, so expect the biases that come with that. Also, I will get my scripting language working eventually, Let's see, what is a good first question to ask? I think we'll just go with, what is SpatialApe and how did you guys get started as a company?
Oh, right off the bat. So this is like a multi-part answer, honestly. So SpatialApe is a software company and we're looking to help make it easier for developers to build complex custom multiplayer games and apps. But how we got started is a bit of a journey. And so SpatialApe is actually a VR developer community group that's been around for a little while. And Justin and I actually acquired SpatialApe last year to change it from being just a community group into being a software company. We originally called it CyberHub Syndicate, and that's actually still the parent corporation name. And then ultimately, we realized SpatialApe is just a better brand, and so we've stuck with SpatialApe, the brand. But the company itself is kind of predominantly and most importantly a software company, focusing on developer tools to make developers' lives easier when they're building out complex custom multiplayer VR software.
I guess let's just ask. So how did you guys meet?
I can take that one.
Yeah?
So I've been doing the YouTube, VR thing for a little while now, and got picked up by a company called XRterra, where I was an instructor for a little bit. And Daniel actually came through one of my development VR courses and was a student of mine for a little bit. And then after he graduated from the program, ended up coming back to me with an offer that sounded pretty interesting, and then we just kind of got in cahoots.
Probably sounded pretty similar to the offer I got.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I'm good at making offers.
And Justin, you actually run a YouTube channel as well. Did that have any influence on any of this, or is it just kind of like gave you experience and whatnot?
I think the YouTube channel has been the big unlock for, honestly, all of my career at this point. Just being able to go through and document my learnings in VR, like back when there wasn't a ton of info out there, I was just learning it myself through, documentation and other people's videos and blogs, and then compiling it together to put on YouTube because I didn't see any other good info out there. And so out of that has come a lot of opportunities through me being able to, do a course and some other stuff, and then opportunities like this come along, and it's, hard to say no to them. So
Yep.
Yeah. Justin's being a bit too shy, actually. I'm gonna jump in there. So the Justin's YouTube channel has been like clutch for us as a company, actually. So our very first customer, Dell, came through Justin's YouTube channel, a lead. Our first two employees that we actually made employment offers to, as well as like they're making equity in the company, came as leads through Justin's YouTube channel.
Really?
Yep. So Joe and Stefan came to us through Justin's YouTube channel. One of our lead developers, Jacob, came through Justin's connection through his YouTube channel, as well as our first software company customer. When we were on the sales call, they were like enamored with Justin. They're like, "Oh, it's the YouTube guy." And so like, I can't even tell you how many times we're on calls with prospects or potential customers or potential partners where they're either knew ahead of time he was the YouTube guy, or in the middle of the call, one guy's like, "What? YouTube?" Like,
wait
there was
a minute.
Like, I followed some of your tutorials. And even one of our guys working with us on our dev shop stuff, we have a small dev shop on the side, told me that when he first transitioned into becoming a VR developer relative to just being a general software engineer, it was through Justin's YouTube videos.
Yeah, it's fun because it's such a small space. So there's like only a few YouTubers. So if anybody ever searches how to do VR things, it's like, me or Valem or even Eli now at this point. And
Yep.
like it's a very, very small community and we like all know each other now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually been surprised with how many people recognize my website. I didn't think it was that big, but like, I run into people on a pretty regular basis that recognize it.
VR is still very, very small. It's like a niche community, and so like at minimum, you're stumbling across people, whether you're searching stuff on YouTube or Google, or whether you're like on Twitter. Like the whole like Twitter sphere of VR is still relatively small. You like bump into the same people over and over again.
So what is your current goal with the company? We'll go with that attack.
So a couple, again, it's like almost every single one of these is like multi-part answer, but like our goal first and foremost is to become a sustainable, successful software company. And we're doing that through selling and promoting and building software for VR developers like ourselves. Justin's a VR developer. I'm maybe not so great of a VR developer, but I'm a VR developer. And a lot of the guys on the team are VR developers. So we're creating software for ourselves, as well as we have the enterprise customer. So we'll dig in more, I think, throughout this interview on what Foundry is and the product and what we're selling to who. But it's also critical to us to have an open source version, a free open source version of the product to help out aspiring VR developers, enthusiasts, kind of indie developers, small shops, nonprofits, etc. as well.
Okay. So that's kind of like information on the outside of what Foundry is. But if you had like an elevator pitch, what would you say that Foundry is?
We've got a tagline we've been kind of workshopping a little bit is where custom VR experiences are forged. As I think the tagline we've been kind of workshopping, but it's basically, if you stop and think about it, there's a lot of companies that want to explore VR. So switching to the enterprise space, there's a lot of companies that want to explore VR. There's a lot of business use cases that make sense, and they end up kind of using these platforms. AltSpace was a big one, no longer anymore, but AltSpace was a big one. Spatial.io, Engage, Arthur. There's a lot of different platforms that they use, and the reason that they use those platforms is that it essentially lowers the barrier to what they need to do to be able to build a multiplayer VR experience. Those platforms handle servers, user management, avatars, room setup, et cetera, and kind of put it in Rails or on training wheels and make it relatively easy with just one kind of dev and designer. They can build out their own VR world. And what we're trying to do is say, hey, those platforms are cool, and in some cases they may be the right fit, but in other cases you want to do your own custom thing. You want to go above and beyond what those platforms will allow you to do, and you also may need to be more secure than those platforms are. If you kind of read through some of those terms of service, some enterprise companies just cannot use these platforms. And so we're trying to basically provide the same value that they're getting out of those platforms and handling a lot of the behind the scenes hard part or the back end stuff, while giving them additional value in that they can do it on their own, custom, on their own, install it on their own servers, no training wheels. They can kind of use as much of what we have or build out further beyond what we have, no problem, because we're giving them the code. On the other side, we can cut there.
I was just going to cut you off and say, so put really simply, it could almost be an open source version of AltSpace. Like put really simply and slightly inaccurately, that's kind of what it is.
In a way, yeah. I think that might be the enterprises are going to be paying for a paid enterprise version of the product, and what they get with that is additional features as well as security, compliance, things like that. But for an indie developer, someone like you or me working on a side project with our friends, for a small game or a small community, the free open source version will largely tick all the boxes while making it a lot easier for you to just kind of build out a cool shared space, a world that you hang out with and your friends, but that you control. I was actually there at the end of AltSpace, and it was just literally heartbreaking the amount of people that put so many hours and effort into building out these amazing worlds that they shared with others, then the whole thing just gets shut down. Hopefully, many of them built those out in Unity first and then exported to Altspace, and if that's the case, we're here for them to be able to quickly spin up.
Justin, how would you describe Foundry?
Foundry's really going to end up being a couple different things. So we have something that's more oriented towards enterprises, and that's really how we're going to end up paying the bills ultimately. And this big enterprise version is really going to be something that will enable some large company to make their own metaverse, that kind of thing. So we basically provide them a template with a ton of those super enterprise boring features, like being able to log in through Teams and like messaging with Teams, and like the security like compliance and all that kind of stuff is all the enterprise stuff. And then on the other side of things, our goal is to have an open source version. So something that is basically like a framework that you can download off of the Unity Asset Store maybe eventually, and be able to drop into a new Unity project and have that template where you can, for free, in an open source project, create your own multiplayer VR games relatively easily. And we'll be able to make this available to lots and lots of people, and maybe it'll even make some fun game jams at some point. We'll be able to use this tool to actually make those VR experiences that you really want. Like we want to help people forge the VR games, and the best part about VR is being able to interact with other people. So
All right, I think that kind of leads good into another question, which is, who are we building this for? Like, if you were to imagine in your mind like one or two different types of developers, who would those people be?
Me. It's all for me.
It's true though. We're building it for ourselves, like first and foremost. And like, there's an old Silicon Valley saying, like, if you build a product for yourself, like, there are other people like you, basically. And so, knowing, it's really hard for me to build a product for old people or for teenage girls or something along those lines. But it's very easy for us to build software that we ourselves need. And like, we're building the software for ourselves, and we're actually even building out our own office space inside of Foundry, so that we can use the software day in, day out, week in, week out, and eat our own dog food, is the other Silicon Valley phrase. And we're building it for you, we're building it for your viewers, we're building it for me, myself personally, separate from myself business-wise, and we're building it out for, I would say we're building it out with a focus on kind of beginner to intermediate level corporate VR devs. A lot of large enterprises and corporations are hiring Unity VR devs who may not be expert level Unity VR devs, and we're trying to make it a lot easier for them to build out a very robust platform for their company without quite having the skills, by being able to see what we're doing, copy what we're doing. We're going to have a huge library of prefab objects, and whatever they want to do, there's going to be an object in that library of prefabs that they can duplicate and then configure and tweak and customize to do what they want to do.
Right, and that kind of answers some questions. Like, before this, we kind of touched on this before, but I kind of threw out and at everyone in my Discord and was like, hey, what questions would you ask these people? And one of the things that, not necessarily a question, but they were interested in was like, what is the motivations behind the company? Because a lot of like crypto metaverse stuff, it's that they were interested in the motivations.
Sure.
So, and I think one of the questions they had to kind of get at that is, how do you define the metaverse? And I guess, how does Foundry relate to that?
Well, really, my motivation, even from when I started the YouTube channel, was to make it easier for people to get into VR and be able to make those experiences. Because I still firmly believe that VR is the truest form of art. And so allowing people the ability to almost make that last final connection in art is, you have the music, you have the storytelling, you have the 3D models, and then that last element is the human connection. And that's really, I think, what we're trying to build here. And we honestly took SpatialApe on in an agreement that we were going to make it open source and make it available to as many people who we could, make it known to, because I mean, selfishly, I want to be able to play more awesome VR games. And right now, the VR games right now, I mean, they're all right, but we're just still starting to hit our stride as a VR community about what kind of games we like, what the actual capabilities of VR are, and we're able to, you know, kind of spearhead that development of what a true VR multiplayer game could look like.
Oh, I love it. I think I share a lot of the same intrinsic motivations that Justin does, and then just to add a little bit on from a more business angle, like what is our motivation from this from a business angle? A couple different things. I think one of them is that when you have an open source project and you manage it correctly, then you can really have a extremely robust, battle-tested, community-driven core to your project. And so the enterprise feature set is sitting on top of a essentially battle-tested core. But if I'm a developer thinking about contributing to an open source project, it's a lot easier when you know that there's essentially a patron company behind it that has additional motivations other than just altruism. And so essentially for us, having the enterprise project be where we predominantly make our money allows us to sponsor and patron and support the open source project. And I believe my thoughts are it'll give the community more confidence that by investing time and energy in this open source project, it's not a lost cause. It will persist. There's a for-profit company that's not just purely altruistic behind it. I have a lot of selfish intrinsic motivations, like I want to also play more VR video games, and I want to make a cool hangout space to hang out literally with my bros, like including my actual brother, and like I want to, and I really like social VR, and so enabling more and more custom social VR is part of my kind of like intrinsic motivation. And then I think another component to this thing is why enterprise, right? Like the enterprise is one willing and able to spend a lot of money. And I've spent the better part of my career, I'm a little older than both of you guys, in San Francisco working in the enterprise B2B software space. So I've been spending my entire career so far, over 10 years, building, designing, and selling software to the enterprise space. So if there's one thing I do know how to do, it's to make software that they want to buy and sell it to them. And so like out of everybody in the VR space, I'm one of the few, I think, uniquely qualified to build and sell directly to the enterprise. Take those big enterprise bucks, and then we can sponsor this open source project, which in turn benefits the enterprise project. And so I kind of see there being a lot of interlinked relationships that all kind of make sense together cohesively.
Before, you mentioned SpatialApe, like the meetup thing. Would you be able to give more details on that and kind of, I guess, pitch it?
Sure. So SpatialApe is a meetup group that existed before this company came to be. There was another company called Spatial Cinematics that created it. It was essentially a side project. And for them, it was a VR developer meetup group meeting up in a custom VR app. And that's what it was. And I used to be a regular attendee. It was pretty much the highlight of my week. They would meet every week, and it was amazing. And you had to sideload the APK every single week. And it was a community group of people, one, willing to sideload an app every single week, two, that were almost exclusively devs, designers, and hardcore enthusiasts. And it was a way for indie devs working on games to showcase their game to the developer community, get feedback from the developer community, and often network with each other. And so it was a way for them. So many people found jobs through SpatialApe, found new gigs, found funding and investment, friends. Like some of my friends now that I've even met in real life came from meeting up with them first in VR. In fact, like there's a woman, Christine, that I became friends with that even works with Justin a little bit on the side. She got her first gig in the VR space through people she networked with in SpatialApe. She worked at Pika VR. Pika VR was one of the companies that was pitching at SpatialApe. She ended up connecting with the guys there, working with them, then kind of moving through her career. Her and I became friends, and then I got her into XRterra, and then she connected with Justin, and I introduced her to Justin. It becomes a part of what helps people connect with and network with each other, and it's part of what makes VR is so special is that you actually feel like you're connecting with these people a lot more than it does in terms of like Zoom, like a panel of images on a screen. And
Right.
so,
And if I remember correctly, they stopped doing them for a bit, but we're actually working on getting them started up again, right?
that's right. Like that's kind of the nucleus of where this all came from. Is that so? It was a labor of love by Spatial Cinematics, and it was not where they were actually making their money. And so it was divorced from their business model, and they kind of let it go. And they were looking for somebody to take it on. And that's where I raised my hand. Was like, let's do this. Let's take this on. But if you're going to make it be successful, you have to have an actual business model around it. Separately, there was this massive gap in the market around kind of the enterprise alt space clone, if you will, or enabling more developers to more easily do what alt space does privately on their own, which SpatialApe, by already having a custom app, had a head start on that. And so Justin and I joined forces to essentially create a viable software company in and around SpatialApe and not just be a meetup group.
All right. I think we can get into the fun questions now. So, how do you guys define the metaverse?
Oof, I'll let Justin take this one first.
Oh, I think that the metaverse already exists and we're already in it. I think it's just not quite fully realized yet. So you have, your phone that you interact with every single day. It's how you communicate with the rest of the world. Like, I've actually never met Daniel in real life, in person. Like, we don't know each other, like, besides Zoom meetings and Discord and all that kind of stuff.
VR.
Yeah, in VR. And so I
I'm
think
pretty close to in person.
we'll probably meet here pretty shortly. But the idea is that you already live in the metaverse. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, they're all different, effectively, rooms or worlds in this metaverse that you exist in. And right now, the only difference between you interacting with it with your phone versus in VR is literally just the inputs, the way you actually interact with that world. And so I think the Ready Player One metaverse that everyone's trying to pitch, where it's going to be one app that you log on to and it's going to be like, that's it, that's going to be the world eventually, I think is a little off.
No.
Yep. It's not, it's like, I think the part that's, I don't know if it's scary or aggravating or whatever, but like the reality is that like augmented reality glasses are going to be the by and far the big winner, right? Like that's what's going to ultimately replace your cell phone. Like if you can take your cell phone and smack it onto your face, that's just going to be so much easier. People are like, oh my God, it's going to be horrible. Yeah, it will absolutely be horrible, but we're also all going to absolutely do it. Like 100%,
Right.
We're going to do it.
I think that's what Apple's gunning for right now,
Yeah.
with all the leaks of whatever they're trying to work on.
There's technical constraints there. It's hard. Where do you put the battery? Where's the processor? Like there's technical constraints, but assuming we come to the point where you have glasses that are on your face or you have contact lenses or bionic eyes or whatever, that will be the primary use case. You will use that 80% of the time and then, have complete full dive immersion of VR a lot less often. But I also think that the VR AR differentiation is going to largely go away. It's going to be a sliding spectrum of how much of the real world versus the digital world is in play, right?
We'll have made it when you can wear glasses. It's cloud streaming, so you don't even need a processor on your glasses. It's just a display. And then when we're using the blockchain, and that'll end up becoming the metaverse.
Yeah, it's a bit of a ways away. I for one, this is maybe a fun question for you, Eli. Like, how willing would you be to replace your eyes with bionic eyes or put a chip in your head so you can slot software in?
It depends on if I can run Linux on them, because I think I would want maybe not the first party OS, because I mean, when I'm traveling and whatnot, I'm actually not on my phone that much. I'm just I enjoy kind of looking out the window and being in reality. So a lot of people, there's two reactions when people talk about replacing AR with everything, or wearing AR everywhere. Some people see a concept drawing of, there's the street and then the hologram ads everywhere, and they're like, oh, cool, so futuristic. And other people are like, what? Why are there ads everywhere?
Yeah, exactly.
So it would really depend on that balance of how much control do I have over this? Can I install an ad blocker? And all that sort of stuff. So the answer is yes, with an asterisk.
With a caveat, yeah. I'm in the same camp. Actually, one of my most popular blog posts is about how awful augmented reality is going to actually be, largely because the current business models just don't with the current business models of technology and mobile apps, it's gonna be ad driven for sure.
Oh no, if it's like mobile app but just covering your entire field of vision, no way.
Dystopia.
It'll be IOI.
Well, we're on the subject of, I guess, monetary stuff. It's kind of a rough transition, but a lot of people associate the word ape with crypto and NFTs and that stuff because, not spatial.
Bored Ape Yacht Club?
Yeah, Bored Ape.
Oh.
So I guess it'd be a good question to ask. What's your guys' opinions on crypto, NFTs, all that sort of stuff? And how does that relate to SpatialApe?
So actually SpatialApe as a brand precedes the Bored Ape Yacht Club. So SpatialApe as a small, niche VR developer community group has existed before the NFT craze and Bored Ape Yacht Club. So we did not copy them. I doubt they copied us, but it was both coming together on a fun brand.
Yeah, apes are just a fun character we can have. As far as NFTs go, I do think that is another element of the future that will end up being used everywhere, and it's just not quite figured out yet. A lot of people see it as really scammy. A lot of people are using it really scammily. I'm doing great with the words today, scammily. But I do think eventually NFTs are going to be the future. It's the way everyone's going to buy things in the future. Right now,
some part of the concept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, conceptually I buy it.
The idea behind it, the emphasis behind it is it's a certification that you own something. And so if we can attach a non-fungible thing to a concert ticket, you can now prove that you own that concert ticket and only you own that because it's tied to your wallet or your identity or whatever. And then you can go into the concert and then you can leave the concert and you can go back into the concert before it's ended and still prove that you have that ticket, and without having to deal with the wristbands and all the stamps and has this ticket been used yet and all that kind of stuff. You can prove that this is me and this is something that I own, and that'll end up being used everywhere. Plane tickets are going to use it. Any ticket kind of software is going to be used, and eventually it'll end up becoming any kind of digital thing that you buy. So right now it's gimmicky stuff like hats and t-shirts on your avatar, in some in Fortnite or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Where it might be a little bit on the overkill side, kind of.
Yeah,
exactly. Right now they're relatively meaningless.
Problem is a term I hear used a lot.
Yeah, I think the underlying concept of crypto, blockchain, NFTs is just so incredibly solid. I'll give you a completely alternative thought process here. Is if you're an American company and you want to just hire somebody in a foreign country, just try it. I know from effect, because we have some of our employees are not US citizens, not living in the United States. It's a complicated, expensive, stupid process. And moving money around the country, around the world, is also a complicated, expensive, stupid process. And so the idea that you can just make it super easy, people can work for companies, it's a global concept, money is this whole, money is already an artificial construct, so it's just where do you want to go with it? So it's making it be this whole kind of globally distributed, uncontrolled, not centralized thing. It'll make it so much easier for companies to pay employees all over the world. The blockchain will allow you to even track things. They could prove, hey, I did work for you for 40 hours, therefore transfer X amount of Bitcoin into my account, so on and so forth. So I think the underlying principles huge. It's going to dramatically shift the financial systems and the economies of the world as a whole over the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 years. Like, how close are we to that? I don't know. There will probably come a turning point at some point in time. And how much of the NFT projects today are, and coins that exist today are going to be here even 12 months from now? Probably very few. It's like, generally, I think part of the reason why you get sometimes icky vibes is like there's just a lot of like hucksters and shills that are creating bullshit coins, and it's a lot of like Wall Street type of people that are like pump and dump. It's like, do you care about this, or are you just trying to make money? No, you're just trying to make money, right? So there's not a lot of good associated feelings with it sometimes.
But on the flip side, banks aren't safe either.
Yeah, as we've all noticed just recently. So Silicon Valley, if you didn't know, Silicon Valley Bank has just gone under, and they're the bank of choice for about 50% of venture-backed Silicon Valley startups.
All right, let's switch back over to some of the more fun questions. What is your favorite depiction of VR, fictional VR?
Ooh.
I mean, it's got to be Ready Player One. that's the go-to answer. That's like ideal. I read and listen to a lot of like sci-fi books, like sci-fi military books, and like all the like super soldiers have like the augmented reality, like headsets and heads-up displays and stuff, and that's always super fun too.
I have to agree with Ready Player One. I think that's the most built out conceptual idea of what it could be. I think as far as fun, may have to go with something like Neuromancer or something along those lines. I really like or even The Matrix. I really like the idea of like jacking into people's brains. And in Neuromancer, they put they call them trodes, and they put these trodes on their heads, and then they like lay down and close their eyes, and like they're inside the construct at that point. And so like that's like a little beyond VR, but like I think those are often fun concepts, like conceptually in sci-fi.
That's like the premise of Ready Player 2, the sequel to Ready Player 1, which is
exactly the just like jacking into the Matrix.
Yeah, for me personally, I would have to say the Mortality Doctrine series is actually my favorite. I think it might be more of a niche one. It's by the same guy who wrote Maze Runner, and I think it actually happens like a little bit afterward it. But they have their own like full dive system. They call them coffins. You lie down in the coffin, all the wires like snake in and attach to you. One of my favorite parts about that series is they had a version of the metaverse where, all the games are connected, you walk to it on the street or whatever. But with the added aspect of when you closed your eyes, you could actually see all the code around you and actually interact with it. And most of the main characters were actually hackers, so they were actually really good at messing with that. So that would have to be my favorite. Let's see. What's another good one? This was one I wanted to ask, but didn't actually get around to it. And this kind of goes back to Foundry and whatever, which is, why did you choose Unity as your game engine and not something like Unreal or even Godot?
Justin.
C#.
C#?
I kind of grew up in C# and my degree was based around C#. I got a software engineering bachelor's, and I learned C# going in, and I didn't even know about Godot when I started game development. So it was really a choice between Unreal and Unity, and Unreal looks gorgeous. And I actually tried Unreal for a little bit, but I just couldn't handle the C++. It's just not... I'm not built for C++. I did the blueprint system for a little bit, and it's a pretty good... Unreal's pretty good. I do think Unity has a little bit of an edge as far as VR and cutting-edge technology goes, because Unreal, it really is more oriented towards AAA games with established systems and all the actual hardware and everything is all very established, whereas Unity is more towards the indie dev, like the people who like to explore and, early Apple.
Right.
I think from my side, I mean Unity is just like the common starting point. So like I started wanting to get into it, and you search YouTube, and Valem has a tutorial, or I took a bootcamp, but Justin was my instructor, and it's all kind of pushing you into the Unity world. And I mean I didn't really care. I knew how to code in Python before that, so it was going to be a bit of a jump from Python to C# or to C++, and I probably could have just made the jump in one shot and it wouldn't have mattered, but ultimately everyone pushed me towards Unity. And then I would say for us from a business standpoint, why Unity for Foundry? And it's the same thing. It's like the same exact forces that were exerted on me are being exerted on the rest of aspiring VR developers. And so you can see, at least within the world of VR development, Unity has the lion's share of the market. And so if you're building a software product and you're going to build it on top of a pre-existing platform, go with the market leader.
All right. Thoughts on interoperability? I got the word right the first time. Let's go.
Nice.
What do you mean by interoperability?
So interoperability, like assets from one game jumping into another.
Ooh, like the Metaverse concept?
Metaverse concepts, yeah.
I mean, I think it goes back to the Metaverse thing. Like in the long run, super cool. In the short run, like a lot of technical challenges around making that actually happen.
It's kind of like whenever the term interoperability is brought up, I think like it sounds really good to players, but then game devs, whenever we hear that, we just start internally screaming.
It's gonna be tough.
Also, designers, same thing. They're like, why would I want those other, like, it's unbalanced then. You're bringing in outside objects or outside things. Like, I have cohesively created this world that makes sense, and now you're gonna like bring this random sword in here? Like, what are you doing,
Or even better, you bring a nuke into your medieval realistic fantasy game.
Yeah. I have to do exclusion zones. This is I do like the way Ready Player One does it, where it's like, this is like a, no technology area, and this is like a no, combat area, and like all that kind of stuff.
I think, they had like the scale of magic to technology, where it's like you can have more or less of it. I think it just like scaled the power or stats of the items and whatnot.
Honestly, I think Fortnite is probably the closest to that conceptually, like, which is kind of silly to think about, but like Fortnite is probably, or maybe even Roblox, like both of those are. So like with Fortnite, the one thing that's really fascinating is you have like lots of different IP floating around in the same experience. You can be Thor, or you can be like Batman. Whoa, hey, two completely separate things in the same thing. Which is fascinating, right? Or you can be like an NFL player. Like so you have like lots of different franchise intellectual properties in the same experience. They also do a pretty good job of having lots of wacky fun stuff that you can do. And so inside the world of Fortnite, it's not like a crazy idea in your mind to have a medieval scene, but you've got guns or whatever. And then the same thing with like Roblox is all one platform, right? So any experience you build inside Roblox, theoretically, you can build a Roblox world that would just be the giant open Roblox world that whoever builds things inside Roblox, it could all work in that world. So like they could probably pull something off like the Oasis if they tried.
And I think to a certain extent they are trying to do that.
It's gonna have to be something like, either one application like the Oasis, or it's gonna have to be a protocol like the HTTP protocol for websites, like that kind of thing. All these websites exist on the same internet, and they're like completely different, but you can bounce from one to the other and even have some bits of one in another one. And so, you can do that. And I think OpenXR is more or less trying to, might be trying to do that a little bit.
I think that's more on the hardware side, but I think there is an organization like the Open Metaverse. I can't remember the exact name of the organization, but there's somebody trying to set that up.
I mean, I would say like from our side, the closest we're getting to that is OpenXR, just trying to build for all headsets at the present moment, like rather than being exclusive to any one headset.
Right.
But like it gets tricky. I think some of what you're actually doing is heading in that direction as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the long play is definitely the web. Like that makes the most sense. Like deploying to internet protocol, basically, in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. What I'm building with my engine is very similar. Like, the formats I'm using for stuff is mostly proprietary, it's in the engine. But if I put out enough documentation on the network protocols, I guess other people could make clients for that. And I mean, it is open source, but yeah. Let me see if we have any more questions. Kind of running out of them. I guess we'll just jump back into the business ones. What's your marketing plan? Obviously, this video is kind of part of it, but it was actually something that, when I was querying my Discord, it was actually something that they expressed interest in.
I'm not much of a, I mean, I actually was a marketer back in the day, but I'm not our marketing guy. So I'm gonna flip this over to Justin. He can explain a little bit about like some of his ideas around, not just right now today, but over the next little bit, like where marketing could go with us.
Yeah. So like obviously we're starting out with some podcasts, trying to get on other people's platforms. That's a pretty relatively quick and easy way to like start out getting your name out there, and then turning, really just to YouTube. Like, so obviously I have my YouTube platform, and then we have, Twitter and our own social medias and stuff. And then we like the idea of having this community of VR developers, like these like kind of hackers that we all hang out and get to know each other, and give each other jobs and all that kind of stuff. And so creating events and like different community things like that, whether that be game jams or virtual meetups, or even maybe eventually live meetups would be pretty sweet, like a VR specific like Foundry, like SpatialApe conference would be super fun, all that kind of stuff. But for now, as many YouTube videos and podcasts and stuff we can put out there as we can, and along with that goes all the video documentations of the platform, and like showing people how to actually use it. And like it'll probably be a lot of me like making games with our our actual open source version and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just to add on to that, like there's almost like two target audiences. One is the developer community itself, and that's where everything that Justin just described, probably and then some, is what we'll do. With YouTube being a major factor, especially given Justin's YouTube career so far. On the purely enterprise side, like the everything we do on marketing will help, but it comes down to sales, relationships, partners, and conferences. And so when you talk about enterprise deals, the numbers are high, the sales cycles are long, they need to make sure they have trust in you. And so it's a long sales cycle where someone like me who has experience selling into the enterprise space spends the time, goes to the meetings, makes it all happen. And sometimes you meet them at business conferences, sometimes you meet them through partner organizations. We actually already have some consulting firms that are like major multinational consulting firms that work with us. And like those are the relationships you nurture to make the enterprise sales actually work.
All right. And then I guess a similar question along the same lines. They were also wondering where our funding is coming from, because they're like, depending on where funding is coming from, that can kind of steer the direction of a company. So I guess if you're comfortable saying.
Absolutely. So right now, to date, all the funding has come from friends and family, as well as customer revenue. So we've been fortunate. So like I mentioned before, with Justin coming in and bringing in a lead from Dell right off the bat. So we started this with a little bit of funding from literally our dads. Neither of our dads are particularly wealthy men, so it's not like it was a large chunk of money, but it was like enough to get us moving in the right direction, along with some revenue from Dell. And so to date, we've brought in 125K in friends and family funding. So exclusively people that we know and generally love us. And at least we hope they love us. But we're our goal is to go get more funding. We're looking to raise around like $400,000-$600,000 in the near future. We're not a publicly traded company. You can't go out and do a massive like public round. There's like various laws around all that. But we are in the process of fundraising and looking at angel investors. There's a huge concern there from your community that I equally share, which is what happens when you take on, institutional capital. And so I'm very, very anxious and leery and mostly avoiding venture capital. And so I'm going to make a distinction between angel investors and venture capital. I do think there will come a time, and it will make sense when we take on the venture capital. But right now, it's friends and family, customer revenue, and we are courting some angels. On those angels, it's only people that have existing experience in and around VR, AR that make any sort of sense. Like they have to fully get and understand where VR is today, how early it still is, and be on board with a slightly longer time horizon. And that's largely like the 2 or 3 reasons why venture capital, I don't know if scares me is the right word, but maybe scares me, is that they want you to become a billion-dollar company as quickly as possible or burn out trying. And I don't know if there is any billion-dollar companies that could exist in the VR developer tool space, at least right now at this precise moment. I think that there is a reasonable probability, that we could build a billion-dollar company over time. But I think that like the idea that you have to push for $1 billion or bust, it's like you could destroy a very viable, profitable software company along the way. So I'm looking for angels that are like, hey, let's just try to get to a $10 million a year profitable company. I think we can reasonably get to a $10 million a year profitable company and get a return for the investors on a reasonable time horizon. And so someone who has managed to make money in and around close to the VR space or the game dev space will understand the time horizons, will understand where VR is, the fits and starts. They'll if they're older, they'll remember like VR being a big thing in the 80s and then another moment in the 90s, and here we are again. And so it's like it's going to come and go, and we have to kind of operate on the correct time horizon. So essentially we're looking for capital, but from very specific people who would then end up being essentially partners and mentors and not just only cash.
Yeah. I actually don't think we've talked about this before, but I actually really like that. That's similar to what me and Alex would want to do eventually with my engine, like in a while, of course, but
that's why the relationship works, I think.
Yeah.
It's like eventually we find the right investors, and they're your same investors. Like those investors for us, like it's mutually beneficial. So it's like we find investors, they're the correct people. So then they invest in us, and then they can invest in you, or theoretically we grow and we can invest in you.
And the idea is we should only need one round of investment, and that'll allow us to get the product up to a really good point, and then we're able to sell, and then we have a bunch of enterprise clients, and then now the enterprise clients fund this open source project we're building.
Right. If you play your cards right, it's possible you could get away with zero capital, like taking on zero capital and kind of
bootstrapping it up.
Yeah, like bootstrap plus a little bit of friends and family. Like
yeah.
The trick is like you run into cash flow problems, and then the cash flow problems makes you be a little cautious. Cautious is not bad. Like being cautious is good, but you could theoretically get there faster. The downside is if somebody does take on a massive amount of capital and gets there before you do, then you're in trouble. So it's like there's this balance. And to Justin's point, can we pull off one solid round and then with angels, not venture capital, and then get there and get kind of up onto this plane? To use like a boating metaphor, if you can get the boat up out of the water onto a plane, then you can go a lot faster. But when you're in the beginning, this is a speedboat metaphor actually, but when you're in the beginning, you're pushing the boat through water. There's a lot of drag.
It's the difference between a service-based business and a software-as-a-service-based business. And software-as-a-service, you actually need that product in order to sell people. And so a service-based business, you can probably pretty easily jump into it without
almost
any
pure
capital,
bootstrap.
because you can just
Right.
promise what you're going to deliver and then deliver that over the course of some kind of time horizon that you talk to with the client, and they pay you up front. Whereas with software, they expect the software at the time of payment, so you got to build that product first. And so that's why a lot of these software as a service companies will go in and get funding and that kind of stuff, is so they can actually build the product and then sell it.
And the margins are
Right.
high. So if you're selling a software product, the margins are high. The cost to bring on an additional customer when you have a software product is near zero. It's like you copy paste the code, boom, there you go, another customer. There's no real cost of goods sold, or there's very minimal cost of goods sold. So it's that initial R&D that costs so much money, which is kind of where we're at right now. And like, we are taking on some professional services customers, because even the professional services can still be pretty reasonably profitable, and we can take that profit and then fund the R&D. But that's a delicate balance, and the faster that we can get away from professional services and focus exclusively on being a software company, the better.
So I guess we'll leave off with just, is there anything else you would want to say before kind of we end here?
To your viewers,
Pitches, links, shout outs, etc.
smash that like button and subscribe. I would just say, like, we're building this software largely for ourselves, you and your viewers as well. And so very, very soon, we're going to have the open source project up and out. The SpatialApe community is open to all
So just
VR
going to cut you off
devs.
there. What is your definition of soon? Because one of the last companies I was at, it was literally a meme in the community that is like,
Soon?
Yeah.
Soon is both yesterday and tomorrow. So right now, today, we do have a couple of repos open. So we kind of began our open source journey already. I would say that's a slice of what we're trying to offer, but it is there. So if you look around for SpatialApe open source, it is out there on the internet, and you can find a repo and you can pull that down to your local machine and get started with a multiplayer VR project right now today. I would say that's a fraction of what we're trying to ultimately offer, and it's really only a slice. So soon is a few months from now. So when we're talking about what we're actually trying to build and what we're actually trying to deliver as an open source project to the community, we're targeting kind of end of May, beginning of June.
All right. Sounds
Justin?
good.
What do you want to leave Eli's viewers with?
What are your final words?
If you're interested in VR, want to start a multiplayer project, which I think ultimately is the best bang for your buck VR application you can build, we are building basically the template that'll save you a ton of time in order to do that. And so right now, like Daniel said, you can download the open source version that we have out right now, which is going to be
hack one?
MIT hack.
it's the MIT hack. Someone actually already used that version to win the MIT hackathon, so it's pretty decent already. But we are planning on adding a ton of new features to it. We're gonna end up calling it the Hack Pack, or we're still brainstorming on names for it. But the end goal is it'll be a template that'll save you a ton of time.
Yeah.
All right.
I think
good.
Leaving people with one more piece of the puzzle here is
just
like
one more thing.
One more thing. I think that like if you're, I have a sneaking suspicion that at least a reasonable percentage of your viewers, as well as Justin's viewers and subscribers, are want to be VR developers. Like they probably are maybe developers, or they're aspiring developers. Maybe they're already existing software engineers that are thinking about transitioning into VR. My push to you is do it. Is do it. It's very rewarding. I don't think there's anything in the technology space. I've been in and around the technology space for a really long time now, and I've been coding, building websites since high school, and like there's nothing more rewarding than actually building software and then being inside your software that you built. And so whether or not VR is the complete future of everything with Ready Player One, or whether it even stays a niche piece of the technology industry for the next 50 years, I don't think it matters. It's very rewarding, and to Justin's point of it being a true art form, it's a magical thing. Like, you go to Altspace and you see the people literally crying because it's being shut down, and you see how much VR can touch people's lives. And so if you're thinking about getting into VR development, just do it. Just do it. Whether you're watching Eli's videos, Justin's videos, taking Justin's course, using Foundry to enable yourself to build something more complex and robust, take that step and do it. You won't regret it.
I would have to agree with that. None of us are in this space because it makes us a ton of money. We're all here because it's just so incredibly fun.
Yeah, it's the most rewarding. I mean, I've been in the technology industry. I was in San Francisco for 10 years, and I've been in the tech industry for a long time. And this is like hands down the most rewarding time period I've had in the entire technology industry. And going to places like MIT, where you're surrounded by hackers and designers working on VR, it's like they pass the vibe check. People in VR right now are just genuinely cool people, and they're awesome people, and they have big souls, and I think they like that immersion and that beauty and that touching and actually being able to kind of feel like you're in the presence of other people, as well as often really cool environments. And like, it's just awesome. It's just awesome. And so if you're like on the edge, like, I kind of want to get into this VR thing, just do it. Buy the headset, download the Unity, start working on it, follow Eli, follow Justin, clone the repo. Let's go. Let's do it.
Get in before Apple releases their headsets and there's a mad rush for VR developers.
Yeah, absolutely. Get in now. I mean, for sure. You'll have a job. I think if you keep diving into this, you'll have a job.
So there you have it. Those are my bosses. Hopefully it wasn't too dry and you got something out of it. If you want to learn more, I'll have all the interesting links for them and myself in the pinned comment. That's about it. I'll see you once I have templates working.